Welcome back to the World Famous Adventurers Club. My name is Grant, back from a brief sabbatical to have my first child. I'm absolutely thrilled to be back at the club, and I'm even more thrilled to be introducing Phoebe and her program, Running Away with the Circus, as my first interview back. As many of you know, Phoebe is a valued friend of the club, and she generally runs all of our AV. So before we start the program, I'd love to give her a round of applause for that. Just thank you so much for running our AV every week for programs just like this one. So,
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it's so great to have you back too. I mean, that's another big achievement, having your first child.
It's an adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to jump in.
Yes.
Just with the title of the program alone.
Okay.
Running Away with the Circus. I feel like it's a childhood dream of a lot of people. Few actually do it. So walk me through this. Let's start at the beginning and kind of just explore from there.
Yeah, totally. So I totally agree that it's a childhood dream of a lot of people. It was a childhood dream of mine. I was always very intrigued and interested by circusy things, circus media, Fellini, and just different circus things that popped up in media. I always found them like incredibly fascinating, and I had never actually been to a circus, and I was about 20 years old. I was living here in LA. I was kind of not going to college, sort of, not really doing much, working at the local library, and a little bit just sort of, directionless, I guess. And one day I was watching this show, some of you guys may know it, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. It's like this old 50s kind of Leave It to Beaver-esque show, and Ricky and David joined the circus, and I remember saying to my boyfriend at the time, wouldn't that be great to just run away and join the circus? And he said, why don't you? And in that moment, I just couldn't think of a good reason why not. So I just started Googling when's the next circus coming to town, and it was Ringling Brothers, like the biggest circus out there. And saw that the next show was in a month. So bought a ticket to that show. I showed up, and I was just like, what kind of jobs do you have? Yeah, and that's kind of how it started.
That's incredible. You, on a whim, were like, I'm going to join the circus. You find the next circus, and you show up, you watch the show, and you're like, okay, what can I do around here? And what did you wind up doing? So
the job that I was given, not very glamorous, just as a concessions person, they had me selling cotton candy. And, actually at first they didn't even, I showed up and they said, okay, wait right here. And I waited and I waited and waited, and I ended up waiting for 6 hours. I brought a book with me, and I just kind of sat there, and I had nothing else to do, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna stick around. And eventually they came out, and they're just like, oh, you're still here. Okay.
6 hours they had you wait.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just I just wanted to do it, wanted to see what happened.
Do you think the 6 hours was a part of the interview there? You think they were like? I
kind of do, actually, because I've seen them do that to other people. And every time I saw them do that to other people, I was just like give it some time, and not a lot of people did, actually.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think if someone said, hey, you wait here.
Yeah.
And if 45 minutes goes by, half an hour goes by, I'm getting antsy. I'm like, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
So the fact that you stuck it out for 6 hours showed that you really wanted to do it.
Yeah. Although that said, I don't know if there was actually that much thought that went into it. They could have just totally forgotten about me, too. So, but yeah, so they put me on cotton candy, which is kind of like the lowest rung, even lower than shoveling elephant poop. Cotton candy is as low as you can go.
Got to work your way up to the elephant poop. Got it.
And I did a few shows in LA, and then they were just like, all right, we'll see if there's room for you on the train. We might have a room open, we might not. But then there's the train right there.
And that's how they travel, by train, all over the country.
All over the country.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, then they called me back. They said we had a room open up. I went to the library. I said, hey, I'm going to quit. I'm going to join the circus. And the next thing I knew, I was packed up and heading to Northern California, so not heading that far away. But
So when you say
yeah.
a room opened up, you mean they like threw a clown off the train, or like did somebody quit?
Somebody quit. Somebody like either quit or moved into a different room. But yeah, there's about, I think it's like a couple hundred people who work and travel with the circus.
Wow.
So it's like this whole little city, and a lot, like most of the people live on the train. Some of the people, have their own trucks and trailers, and they choose to live in those, especially people who have been with the circus for a really long time. But yeah, most of the people live on the train. This picture that we're looking at right here is what's called the pie car. That's the restaurant on the train. So they have meal service going on whenever we're traveling. They have meal service going on, so like whenever the train is moving. But yeah, most of the people live on the train, and I forgot your question, I'm so sorry.
No, this is perfect.
Okay.
Please keep going.
But yeah, I hopped on, and I think we have a picture of the room somewhere in there. Sorry to jump ahead for you, Andy. Yeah, so that's what the room looks like. That usually will fit about 2 people. That bottom section down there opens out and actually becomes another bunk bed, so you can like put it up during the day, have breakfast there, and then at night open it out into another bunk bed. So we've got about 2 people sleeping in these rooms. And there's kind of a hierarchy of rooms on the train. Like I said, concessions is kind of the lowest rung, so we have the smallest rooms. No bathroom, no shower in here. It's a shared bathroom and shower on the train car, but not in the rooms. But as you get, kind of more into like animal crew and performers, you get bigger rooms. The train master and the ringmaster have like their own train cars. So there's a bit of variety in like the living situation.
So you said train master?
Yeah.
Is that the individual that's responsible for this moving city?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it really is a functional city.
Yeah, yeah.
You have-
No, go ahead.
I was just to say you have this rolling city, and you have these performers that you had just mentioned that you think of when you think of circus. But I'm assuming there are many, many people that are support to
Exactly.
the support even.
Yeah, it takes a lot to keep the show running, to keep the train running. We have like cleaning crew, we have, train crew, we have ring crew, we have animal crew, sound, lighting. It's such a big production that it's not just, the performers and concessions. There's so many different options. And somebody was asking me earlier about joining the circus, and I believe that they are in production in some way. And there's a lot that goes into that too. So there's a lot of AV people, there's a lot of like production people and musicians. We have a band. So yeah, there's kind of roles for everybody. It's a whole little ecosystem. Yeah.
How do the animals travel? Are they in like a box car? You got a giraffe sticking up out of the train?
We didn't have a giraffe, but we did have elephants. Elephants would travel on the train. And the lions and tigers actually didn't travel very well on the train, so they would travel by truck. But everything else would travel on the train. Yeah.
God, so in addition to the train itself, there are support vehicles with other performers and animals like you. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's always a crew that drives alongside the train. Yeah, here's some of the animals right here with the lion tamer. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you joined the circus. You're fulfilling this
this childhood fantasy. Yeah.
And you're in California, Southern California, presumably, and you've waited your 6 hours. You got your concession job. You've got the room on the train. Where did you go from there?
So from there, I was with the circus for about 6 or 7 months, maybe a little bit longer, and we traveled from Los Angeles to Orlando, basically. So along the way, we stopped in, like I said, Northern California, and we went to like Utah, Colorado, Michigan, Chicago, Indiana. We went, just many different stops along the way, all across the United States. Yeah.
Take a train track and follow it.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think we have some pictures of like the view from the train as well. Yeah, there we go. Really pretty views from the train. It's an incredible way to see the country. I've done a lot of driving around the U.S. too, and it's not anything like traveling by train. You know, you get views that you never really see from the road, or, you know, if you're going just to like cities, it's just places that most people aren't really seeing. And we go through these little tiny towns where people like stand outside and wait for the circus train to come out and wave to you, and, you know, people like know when it's coming.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. Yeah.
And were you doing shows in these smaller towns as well, or?
Not really. Ringling had 3 shows that were running. I'm sure many of you guys have probably heard that Ringling went away for a while. They closed up, and then they, I believe, just came back this year, last year, recently. But in the time that I was there, they had 3 shows running at the same time. They had 2 train shows and 1 show that was just truck and trailer. And the truck and trailer show did the smaller towns. But the 2 train shows, the blue unit and the red unit, did larger cities mostly. So we would do some like suburbs of bigger cities. You know, I think in Ohio, you know, we did like Cleveland, and then we also did Toledo, which is a little bit smaller, but we never did like the tiny towns. But there's a whole, everybody always thinks of Ringling when they think of the circus, but there's so many circuses in the US that, you know, do play those smaller towns. So many like much smaller circuses. They're referred to as mud shows by people.
You said mud shows.
Mud shows.
Mud shows.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Tent shows where, you know, everything gets like muddy and dirty, and
Yeah.
they're not, you know. But yeah, so there's mud shows all over that play in these little tiny towns, and there's still a pretty vibrant circus culture in the U.S.
It's as at least I've found it, it's a piece of classic Americana.
Yeah,
It's
very
this
much so.
kind of this very American thing to go and see the
Yeah.
circus roll through your town, big or small.
Yeah.
So while you were with the circus, you started out in concessions. Did you change jobs? Did you grow? Did you become a higher up?
Not really. I wasn't really quite there long enough to do that. I mean, I went from doing cotton candy sales to doing elephant photos, which sounds even more like glamorous than it is. It was really a very like staged photo, you know. But yeah, that was the big
It's a hell of a promotion.
yeah, thank you. Big promotion. That was the word I was looking for. But yeah, you know, to me, it didn't really matter that much what I was doing. And, you know, they're not gonna, a girl walks in off the street, they're not gonna put her on the trapeze right away.
Sure.
You know? So I was happy to just do anything and just live on the train and be able to be a part of that culture and that environment. And, you know, once you actually, yeah, that's a great picture. Thank you, Andy. That's kind of exactly what I was thinking of. I mean, once you actually like get in there and get on the circus, and it does take some time for people to warm up to you, because there's a lot of people who are like kind of coming and going. But there's a lot of people who, you know, they're in the circus, and their parents were in the circus, and their kids are in the circus, and, you know, people just kind of grow up in this environment. And so there's a lot of like families and people who have just been in it forever. And it's pretty special to see like the way that these people live in this kind of very like separate community from the places that they're going through.
Yeah, an incredible subculture. Very insular, it sounds like. You've got this kind of
very insular.
weary of the passing stranger who might whip cotton candy and then leave in 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about the people you met, the families, the interesting notes and elements you took away from that.
Yeah, I mean, the people are fascinating, you know, because it's people from all different countries around the world. You know, we have performers. These performers are just amazing, amazing athletes who have been practicing their craft for, you know, their entire lives. Here we have these guys from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and I mean, the way that they can ride horses is just absolutely like unbelievable. That's a girl named Estelle. And, you know, she's in this picture, I think she's about to like flip underneath the horse and cut out the other side, yeah. So just like incredible, like talented people, but also people who, you know, just really like love traveling and love, you know, just being a part of that culture.
It's more nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very nomadic, very, very nomadic. That's kind of the perfect word for it.
Yeah. And it strikes me as a big change from, I think you said you were working in a library.
Yeah.
You were just kind of having a life, and then you said, I'm going to go join the circus. Was this your first real big adventure?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, I had kind of barely left California before that. I mean, a couple little trips here and there, but yeah, that was my first time ever really traveling and ever seeing the rest of the country. You know, and I just kind of stepped on the train, and then that was it. That, you know, we were off.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
How did you feel throughout the journey and at the end of the journey? What did you take away from this as your first big adventure, seeing this whole new way of life with these new people and
It was very eye-opening to me, honestly, that like, you know, here I was sitting there watching Ozzie and Harriet, and then the next thing I know, I'm traveling on Circus train, and it really made me feel like, you know, what else can I just go do, you know? And I mean, I don't know if we want to move on to something else now or if we want to stay on the circus, but I mean, yeah, it opened up the door for me to just like try other things too and try and challenge myself, because it was a very challenging experience. I mean, I felt terrified to step on that train, you know, with all these strangers, and people were just like, you're joining the circus? Aren't you going to like get kidnapped? Or, you know, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, kidnapped, shot out of a cannon, something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are they going to make you grow a beard?
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, to do that experience and then be able to kind of come out of it and be like, okay, that was great. You know, I loved that, and I made these great connections, and it was everything that I wanted it to be. You know, what can I do next? Yeah.
This was a first step on a broader trail of adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great first step. I mean, it, you know, like I said, I got to see so much of the country, and it really just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, most people I think would, or I'll say a lot of people, they think of adventure as something that's completely separate from their career path.
Right.
They don't want a job in it. Or if they do, it's I'll rephrase that. It's something separate from a career. And it seems like you've made a career of adventure beyond the circus, moving into, I think it was a ranch?
Next was Alaska, actually.
Alaska,
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I wanted to like go different places and explore different things and experience different lifestyles that, you know, people are out there living. You know, people are out there working in the circus. People are out there, you know, living in Alaska, working with sled dogs and stuff like that. And, you know, I wanted to see what that was like. And, you know, to me, it didn't seem like there was an accessible way of just like, you know, spending the money for the trip and going up there.
Yeah.
But once I figured out that I could like get a job and go up there and have that experience and immerse myself in that, you know, that really seemed like the path to doing it, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, before we move to Alaska,
Sure.
what was the defining moment of you saying, okay, I'm done with the circus, I'm moving on to something else?
Yeah.
And actually, before you answer that, was there any period of time while you were working in the circus where you thought, oh, I could really do this? I could do this for a long time. I could.
Like the circus?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God, I like didn't want to leave. Yeah. I think the defining like moment for me, kind of, there wasn't really a defining moment, but when the show ended, we had a break, and I fully intended to go back after that break. I was planning on just continuing to do it, you know, because I really enjoyed it. But during that break, I went back home. There's always like a winter break that's like a month where they kind of like we reset things, people go back home, visit their families. So I went back home, and on my first train run, as it's called, when the train's moving from town to town, a couple of the people who I was talking to, we were standing out on what's called the vestibule, which is the space in between the train cars. And on the Circus train, yeah, there's the vestibule right there. On the Circus train, they have it like open, so it's like a half door. So you're like out there in like, the fresh air, just like great view of the countryside. And we were standing there on the vestibule talking, and somebody had mentioned that they wanted to go to Alaska next. That was their next thing. And we all kind of made a pact that that was going to be our next thing. And that idea just kind of stuck in my head, So when I got back from the circus that winter, I just started looking for jobs in Alaska. And then I had already bought my tickets back to go back to the circus. And then I told them, I'm actually not going to come back. I'm going to take this job up in Alaska instead. So I think the lesson we're learning here is don't hire me because I'm not going to stay. But yeah, so I started looking for jobs in Alaska, and I looked around at a lot of little like lodges and stuff like that as like a cleaner or maid or something like that. And I applied for this job that was glacier dog sledding tours, and didn't think I would get that, but they called me and found out, they saw on my resume that I had worked for the circus, and so they called me up and they really wanted to know, was I lobster claws or bearded lady? And I think from there they were just like, all right, we got to hire the circus girl and see what she's like. We got to place bets on which one she is. So I ended up getting that job doing the glacier dog sledding tour stuff. And once again, that was just, tour assistant, unloading helicopters, leading tour groups to their musher, helping out.
What's a musher?
Sorry, yeah, moving a little fast, aren't I?
No, not at all.
But yeah, a musher is, so like I said, it's a glacier dog sledding tour. Mm-hmm. In dog sledding, the musher is the person who runs the dog sled.
Ah.
Yeah. So we had, I think it was 6 mushers up there with, teams of like 40 dogs each.
Wow.
And they would, pick about 12 dogs to run for a tour and hook them up to the sled and lead people around this glacier. And it was really like simple little track. I mean, it was, like a couple miles maybe around the glacier, kind of around in a loop. But, for a lot of the people who came up there, it was their first time in a helicopter, first time on a dog sled, first time on a glacier, which it was for me as well. So, I mean, it was pretty incredible experience.
I can imagine. So you get the job. Mm-hmm. They say, come up to Alaska, help us unload helicopters, show people where they need to go. Mm-hmm. Walk me through more of this position.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of the tour part of the position. But in order to make these tours happen, it required like a whole working camp, like once again, this is a job. I'm not commuting from LA, I'm living up there. We're staying on the glacier in a camp in these wall tents right here. And, people are living up there. We had about like 16 people living up there, I think. We had a cook, we had mushers, we had, just support again. I mean, it's kind of same with the circus. It's like its own little ecosystem, its own little town, even though it's just a town of 16 people. But yeah, so a lot of the job was just kind of helping out making this camp run, especially with so few people. We have 120, 140 dogs, something like that up there. Wow. So it's a lot of dogs to take care of for 16 people. I just, I have 2 dogs. That's a lot of dogs to take care of. But yeah, so we're always, everybody's feeding the dogs, everybody's giving medications, everybody's, picking up dog poop. Everybody's like helping with cleaning and maintaining the camp and the porta potties and, everything that basically takes to keep this place functioning during the several months that we're up there living on this glacier.
Did you find it to be a change of pace from the circus?
Oh, definitely.
Going from like 100 people plus on a train to 16 people in a camp?
Yeah. In a way, 100 people is a little bit easier, because you get, and like there's more space on the circus train too. I mean, we're just in this little tiny camp with 16 people. You really get to know everybody.
I guess you do have a little bit more, if not anonymity, on the train with 100
Totally.
people. You could have a little bit more privacy in terms of who you're seeing every day.
Absolutely, and you're going around from city to city, and you can explore. And one thing I didn't really touch on is that on the train, when we're moving from city to city, we're locked in there. You're spending 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 days on the train, not getting out with, all of those other people. So we have those periods of time where we're just like basically trapped on the train with people. But then we get somewhere, and then it's like, everybody gets out, everybody goes their own way. Here, we have days off where we fly down into town, but, other than that, we're just up there with people.
Yeah, you're locked into this camp up here. I'm assuming you can't walk far because it's...
No. I mean, glaciers are dangerous.
Glaciers
People
are dangerous,
are supposed to live on glaciers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a kind of question that comes up for me now about the circus and the camp here, conflict management. I assume, you have, people are people, and you have 100 of them on a train, plus conflict arises. How was that dealt with? And did you see any conflict, participate in any conflict?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it definitely arises, and we're mostly adults, and people deal with it. I mean, especially in the circus, I don't think I ever really saw like management necessarily have to step in. There's a story I'm deciding if I should tell her or not, honestly.
As an interviewer, I recommend you do, but.
So the probably the most extreme example that I can think of, in terms of conflict and conflict management, whether you want to call it that or not. And I will say I didn't witness this happen. I don't know if it actually did or not. Maybe just a rumor, maybe something that they tell people to people who are new to the circus to scare them away. But there is this circus term called red lighting, if anybody's familiar with that at all. The circus it has its own language, it really has its own culture. But red lighting is this form of conflict management where if somebody upsets somebody else, they get thrown off the train in the middle of the night while it's running. And there was at least rumored to be an instance of that, like right before I joined.
That's how your room opened up.
Maybe, actually, yeah, now that you mention it. But yeah, that's the most extreme case of like people not getting along that I really encountered there. Other than that, in the circus, I don't think I really like witnessed too much like major conflict. Obviously people don't get along.
Sure.
So when you got 200 people, not everybody's going to get along. But on the glacier, it definitely was a much bigger deal. Because you only have 16 people if people don't get along, and a lot of people ended up not. There was a big turnaround, I'll say.
Okay.
So, for a lot of people, I think even just the environment is tough for them. And I think that keeps, it's hard to have a good attitude when the environment is difficult for you like that. So I do think that happened occasionally, and when somebody is having a hard time, I think it kind of pulls down everybody else. And I saw people who went up there and pushed through it. I saw people, because I worked with this company for about 3 years, and
So much longer stint.
much longer, yeah. I didn't live on the glacier the entire time. I lived on the glacier for some of it, and then some of it I worked down at the helicopter base doing basically like providing support from down there. So doing like orders and, helicopter loads up, and, just figuring out what we needed from like base camp, basically. So yeah, in that time there, I saw people push through. I saw people who had to leave. I saw, a lot of different situations come up. But, I also think that living in an environment like that, where everybody is so close, can bring you closer together, even if it's hard, and you definitely can push through those difficult times and form closer bonds.
Brings out the best people and the worst, it seems like.
Exactly.
Talk to me about some of those bonds, some of those highlights, if you will.
Sure. Interesting question. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm struggling to think of like a single example, but like,
maybe a moment when the team really came together over a challenge. 'Cause I'm assuming it's a very challenging environment to execute what you're executing, these sled dog tours.
I mean, the team came together a lot, honestly, because there were a lot of times where we all had to like work together, storms, bad weather days. I mean, and you can't get some, to like do, some of the things that we had to do on like tight schedules before weather came in. Like you can't really do that stuff without having a close bond and coming together. Yeah, I feel like that didn't make much sense, but
No, I hear exactly what you're saying. You've got to be able to count on the person you're working with in this kind of environment. So you have to have a close working relationship in order to, make sure you can count on the guy next to you or girl next to you to, make sure they pack their snow shovel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did you ever aspire to become a musher?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think I aspired to become, everything that I did, I aspired to become a trapeze artist. I aspired to become a musher, and I do some of like the silk stuff now just recreationally. I don't do any mushing here in California, unfortunately.
A little more difficult here, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I mean, working with the dogs is just incredible, and the dedication that the mushers have, and the love of the dogs, and it's beautiful to see. And a lot of these mushers, most of these mushers, honestly do the big races. They do the Yukon Quest and the Iditarod.
Interesting, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like that just sounds incredible. Even. Not even becoming a musher, but just like going up there and just watching them do that, or being a handler for that, which a handler is like basically an assistant to a musher, has always been something that I've wanted to do. But it takes a ton of dedication. I mean, you really have to dedicate your life to it.
I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, you said 160 dogs up there?
On the glacier, yeah.
On the glacier, 160 dogs, 16 people. How many mushers? How many leads?
6.
6 leads.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is an incredible amount of work maintaining all these animals with such a small group of people. Were there like veterinary staff? Were the mushers responsible for their animals?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we had a vet who would come in and check on them, check on things every so often. And there was, if we had a dog that was sick, if we had some sort of an incident, we could fly him down and send them to, usually send them over to Juneau or something. So it was quite the process, honestly, if there was an incident or something. But other than that, I mean, people have to take care of their own dogs pretty much. Yeah, so you really have to have that veterinary knowledge as well if you're going to do it. I mean, yeah, if you're running dogs, you kind of know the ins and outs of all of it. But yeah, so this camp, we had 160 dogs up there, but this camp was only a temporary thing. For a lot of these mushers, you know, at the end of the season, they fly their dogs back, and they might have kennels with like 20 or 40 or 60 dogs themselves, and then they go, you know, go back to those kennels, and the dogs live there for the rest of the season, which really, the training season for them, and like the racing season is the winter. The season that we were doing this was in the summer, and that's kind of the off season for them.
I see.
It's sort of like training light, where they're still getting to run, but it's not like the heavy training and the racing. So yeah, when they leave this, they go back, they've got about, you know, 40, 60 dogs.
So the tours were just light work for these dogs.
Yeah.
This was just
Very much so.
you know, a jaunt through the park, you know, just,
Yeah.
you said it was a couple mile loop
Yeah.
that they would go on.
Yeah.
Wow. So, you know, I didn't even think that there were, you know, on seasons, off seasons for mushers. I love
For
that word now.
everything.
I've just learned this word. I'm not
Oh,
going to
did you
stop saying
really?
that. Yeah, I've never
Oh,
heard
that's
musher
funny.
before. And the races they participate in must be fantastic, like the races you just mentioned. Do you have conversations with them about those races, stories from those races?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you know, like I said, a lot of the mushers that worked up there either, you know, were running or had run in the past. And in fact, one of them has actually given a talk at the club. You can find it on the YouTube. His name is Riley. He gave his talk after he ran his first Iditarod, I think it was, or his second or something. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of stories about, you know, running into moose and, you know, getting caught in storms, and yeah, I mean, but a lot of it, it's like 10 days of running. It's about 1,000 miles.
Wow.
And it's just kind of like you and the dogs out there. Obviously, I haven't done this, but you know, for them, it's
Sure.
just, it's them and the dogs out there. Yeah.
Now, did you get to do the tours
Yeah.
working there? You got to
yeah.
run the dogs?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we got to ride on the sleds. So living on the glacier, we'd be there in the summer, and the snow would melt throughout the season, so we'd have to move camp several times throughout the season.
Oh, wow.
Because as the snow melted, we got closer to the ice, and the dogs couldn't run on the ice as well as they could the snow, plus it's a lot more dangerous. There's crevasses and moulins and, you know, holes and cracks, and yeah, here's a picture of some of the glacial ice. Things to fall into. And so as we were moving camp, we would usually like use dogs to move camp. We also had snowmobiles and different machines and stuff, but we would do a lot of like runs back and forth with the dogs as well to move stuff. Plus, you know, we would just take them out on runs, especially on weather days. Southeast Alaska weather is unpredictable and crazy, and all of our helicopters that we used were site-based helicopters. So if the weather was really bad, they wouldn't be flying up there. So we'd get stuck up there, you know, sometimes
Oh, no kidding.
for days or even a couple weeks at a time without having a tour in. So we would take the dogs out, just run them around to get them exercise during that time.
So
Yeah.
there was a possibility you'd be, I don't want to say
stuck.
stranded, but
Yeah.
stuck
Yeah,
for several weeks
totally.
at a time.
Yeah, and I mean, we can't, you know, there's no grocery stores up there, so we only have so many rations. You know, like I said, we usually get like days off every so often, so if weather comes in right before your day off, you're kind of screwed. That's it,
Sure.
you're up there. And
Yeah,
we
I guess a
spent-
day off up there is really just either staying in your bunk or going for a walk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you definitely go a little stir crazy up there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we would definitely run the risk of being stranded sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned rations. Walk me through some of the food. You said you had a cook up there? Or?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, honestly, in all of these places, like, we have somebody coming up at the club in a few weeks who's a cook who cooked in Antarctica. And I've found that, like, the cooks in a lot of these places are just incredibly skilled cooks. And, you know, you get some who are better than others, but I mean, the food is great. You know, we have somebody on staff who's cooking, and they obviously don't have, in this situation, they don't have like the best, like most high-tech kitchen. Everything was propane. We would, propane stoves. Our fridge was a hole in the ground, pretty much. So things would be kept cool during, in the ice. So you couldn't really have any like frozen things. Having like ice cream up there was a huge luxury because the ice cream would melt. The snow wasn't able to keep it cold enough for very long. So yeah, we would get, usually like pretty hearty stuff because people are working all day long. So like just meats, potatoes, try and get fruits and vegetables up there too, but a little bit more of a luxury for fruits at least. But we usually had stuff. And then during the day, everybody was out working and running around. So it would just be like sandwiches and stuff like that. But yeah, it was, it was pretty good food. And honestly, like in my experience with these places, the food makes a big difference in terms of people's like overall morale and like enjoyment of the place, because it's kind of one of the only like comforts that you have there. So food becomes a very important thing. You don't have a bed. You have a bed, but it's a piece of plywood. You don't
Wait,
have.
it's a piece of plywood?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So it's not a cot or something, like it's just plywood on?
Plywood on some like, stands, sleeping bag. That's about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know why. So I saw the tents, right, or the domes, and I thought, oh, okay, you probably have a cot in there, and
I mean, you could probably bring your own cot if you wanted to. But yeah, they provide you with like a piece of plywood. In those things, we'd usually sleep about like very, very luxurious.
it's standard issue plywood.
Yeah.
I mean, I sleep on it all.
5/8, 3/4.
Yeah. If you're lucky, they give you a 2x4 for a pillow.
But yeah, we'd fit about 4 people in those tents. So there's a divider in the middle, and then you have you and your roommate on one side, and then another person, another 2 people on the other side. And yeah, I mean, pretty sparse accommodations, just two plywood beds, and you could bring your backpack in. You have a propane heater out there on the side that you could turn on, but you don't want to leave it on for too long because those fumes are gonna get you a little loopy.
And no electricity.
There was a generator, but it was mostly used for communications things, because we were always in touch with the base camp.
Sure.
Yeah, so yeah, the communications tent had a generator, had a gas power generator up there, but that was about it.
So no lights in your tents.
No, yeah, I mean, you could, like little like flashlights and lanterns and stuff like that. Oh, speaking of lights.
There we go. So it's I don't know why my mind immediately went to, oh, you probably have some lights in there and you've got some kind of infrastructure. And then as you were talking about moving the camp entirely, I realized that was probably a little less feasible. And then you get to the wood plank and you realize, okay, this is bare bones.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. Everything's flown up every year.
Wow.
On a helicopter, or under a helicopter like this, yeah. This process is called slinging, and everything goes into these big parachute bags or put together in loads and just gets flown up, and then it gets flown down every year. Otherwise, when you come back the next year, if you haven't flown it down, it's buried in 20 feet of snow. So you either have to fly it all down or dig it out. But yeah, so everything, we just kind of take up the necessities mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So working for this company for 3 years, it probably felt like a bit more of a career than, I think it was, you said 6 months at the Circus.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I should say 3 years on, off. It wasn't 3 years straight, because they have, like I said, they have their seasons. So we would set everything up, we'd tear everything down, and then we'd have a few months off. But yeah, I mean, it did feel like more of a career, especially, like I said, going from tour attendant to what they called the expediter position, which was, a lot more like logistics and camp like planning and stuff like that. Yeah, so it felt like much more of a career. But, there was also more that I wanted to see too.
Say that one more time.
There was also more that I wanted to see
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like positions like this with the circus and then subsequently with this sled dog company, there's always something to do. There's always somewhere to go. There's always something else to see.
Yeah.
What was the decision to stop working for this company? When did that occur? And we'll start there.
Yeah.
We'll make it a two-part question.
I mean, I don't really know, like, once again, there's not necessarily like a moment. I mean, when I joined the circus, there was a very clear moment. With these things, I think it was just, kind of that itch to like try something else, to do something else. And, I think my third year, I just really felt like, I guess my third year, I was doing the same position that I was doing the second year, which was the expediter position. And I think, I just felt like I had seen it, I had done it, and I wanted to try something else. Yeah.
So it stopped challenging you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that is kind of key. It wasn't as much of a challenge anymore.
Yeah.
And I still loved it, I mean, it still was a great job, but it just wasn't as much of a challenge at that point. Yeah.
So in those three, I'll call them seasons since it wasn't years, straight up. In those 3 seasons, what did you take away from that subsequent adventure? You had the circus that was a springboard into, I can really make an adventure a job, and then you do this for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think I took away that I really enjoyed working with animals, and I didn't enjoy the tourism aspect as much, actually. I mean, it was great in some ways. It's great to see people get up to this glacier and start crying because they've never seen anything that beautiful in their life, and it's amazing to share that experience with people. But it also felt a little bit, manufactured. I mean, we're up there because of tourism, because of these tours. And I mean, I wouldn't have an opportunity to live on a glacier if it wasn't for that. But yeah, I think I kind of did take away that I wanted to move out of tourism a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
People suck, animals are great. I think a lot of us land there.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So onward from Alaska and the glaciers, your next job was an adventure as well.
Onward from Alaska to Alaska, basically. So I went from there to another part of Alaska called Dead Horse, which is the highest, it's like the furthest north point in the US that you can drive to. And it's kind of like right on the coast of the Arctic Ocean. And yeah, I went up there and got a job as a, kind of in a tourist operation, but also kind of not. There's not as much tourism that comes through Dead Horse. Got a job as like a cleaner and, basically like concierge at this like hotel camp up there. But that job kind of transitioned into breakfast cook. When I got the job, they said, you'll be doing some cooking every so often. And I was just like, okay, good, because I'm not that good of a cook. And then they lost their breakfast cook. They didn't die or anything, but they
didn't get red lighted.
Yeah, didn't get red lighted. And they needed somebody to fill that position, so I just kind of ended up in that position. And yeah, like I said, it's was kind of a tourist spot, but also not really. Like the type of tourism that came through there was very different. Mostly this camp existed for people who worked in that area. We had a group of probably like 30 guys, maybe 40 guys, who stayed there 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. They'd trade off and work up in the area. And we had a lot of like construction workers coming through, a lot of scientists coming through, different people who were up there, film crews, stuff like that. who were going up to the Arctic for one reason or another and needed a place to stay up there. And then we also had the occasional person who was either completing the Pan American Highway or there's this thing called the Iron Butt Challenge, which is a motorcycle trip that goes from the tip of Key West up to Dead Horse, Alaska. So you basically cross the US diagonally. And we had some people who were doing that. We had some people who were, you know, just coming up to do the Arctic plunge in the Arctic Ocean. We're about a mile away from the Arctic Ocean up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Close to the Arctic Ocean.
Close, but with a very key thing in between us. The Dead Horse is right on the edge of the oil fields up there. And in order to get through to the Arctic Ocean, you have to go through the oil fields, which you need like special access.
I see.
We did, you know, we did provide with like tour groups. We would have people taking groups up there to go to the Arctic Ocean, basically dip their toes in and come back.
That's great.
Yeah.
So when you say camp, hotel and camp, was it like a hotel, like a building, and then there was like a camp, like a tent aspect to it, or like?
I think we have some pictures in here, maybe. I think we have a picture in here of what it looked like when I first got there. They're asleep in the AV room.
I think, yeah, you fell asleep. Well, while that's loading, I'll move on to my next question about cooking. So you became kind of a breakfast cook, and you didn't expect to.
Yeah.
Did that improve your cooking skills?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of like experimentation and, oh yeah, that's our house. But yeah, it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of like experimentation and learn a lot of new things. And fortunately, the people up there were pretty patient with me. I mean, I was working up there, you know, with these incredible chefs doing like dinner and lunch who had, you know, 20, 30 years of experience and had cooked in like, you know, these 4-star restaurants and just, you know, amazing, amazing chefs. And then there's me who's terrible, but, you know. But yeah, so it definitely, I think it did improve my cooking. And I think that it gave me, like I said, the opportunity to learn and experiment more. And yeah, I'll get back to the house question since I think they must be having some issues back there. But yeah, so the hotel, there was like a main building, and it's all like very like temporary structures up there. It's not like a wall tent like we had in the Arctic. It's much more like solid than that, but it's everything is made to be moved still. There's really like in that area, nothing like permanent. I mean, I think there's like 2 permanent residents up in Dead Horse, or at least there were when I was there. Like everything moves, everything changes. So it's a lot of like you know, just kind of like box like buildings that are just like easy to move, easy to tear down. And I mean, it had been there for a long time. It's not really going anywhere, but it's made to be, you know, just sort of assembled and moved. And it's also very sparse, very bare bones too. I mean, the people who stay up there aren't staying up there because of the accommodations. They're staying up there because they have to. So, you know, it's nice, it's clean, but it's a room with a bed, not made out of plywood, but it's, you know, not that much more comfortable than a plywood bed. And yeah, it's, you know, yeah.
So how long were you in Dead Horse?
I was in Dead Horse for probably about 8 months.
8 months in Dead Horse.
Yeah.
8 months in Dead Horse sounds like a memoir.
This is also not the hotel. Very sparse and bare bones.
You look very different here, Phoebe.
Thank you. Yeah. Was
this in Dead Horse?
This is not in Dead Horse. Actually, this is, but it is from the time that I was up in Dead Horse. The company that I worked with up there, like I said, they offered some trips to the Arctic Ocean for people who were coming through. They also offered, there's an airport nearby, and there were some tour flights going out to Utqiagvik, which was previously known as Barrow. So this is in Barrow, which is, I think it's like the actual highest point in the U.S. So Dead Horse is the highest point that you can drive to, or the furthest north point that you can drive to, and Barrow is like, further out than that.
I see.
Like more like in the ocean. You can only drive when basically the Arctic ice is over, but you have to be like a trucker or something
Sure.
like that to actually get through to there. But yeah, this is in Barrow, Utqiagvik, and it's this incredible little museum that I was wandering around with another girl who worked with me in Dead Horse, and we happened to like meet some locals, and they were like, "Oh, you guys should check out Joe's museum." And so they gave us Joe's phone number. Joe's museum is in Joe's house. He actually had to move out of his house because his museum got too big and took over, so he had to move somewhere else. You can see it's kind of all over the place, but this is stuff that he's just collected from many, many years of living in Alaska, artifacts. I mean, he's got some wild things in there. Polar bear pants come to mind, just like all sorts of different things, lots of scrimshaw, lots of,
Like pants made out of polar bear?
Pants made out of polar bear, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Lots of like old fossils and just like, fascinating stuff. It's honestly reminds me a lot of this place. I don't know if you guys can see the similarities there.
Yes.
But yeah, it definitely reminds me a lot of this place. And it's, especially reminds me of this place too, because it's just this like secret little inconspicuous place that you would never know was there if you just walked by this house and just thought it was just this house, and then you walk inside and it's this like incredible collection of history and Joe's immense knowledge of Alaska and Alaska history and just like all of these artifacts that he has there. So that was a pretty cool experience to get to have. And if anybody finds yourself up in Utqiagvik, check out Joe's museum, ask somebody for Joe's phone number.
Just anybody walking on the street, they'll know.
They might have it, yeah. It's not a very big place, honestly.
So this is a museum on the edge of the world, really.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic. And so you said you had to move out of his house because the museum took over.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Was there anything specific that stuck out aside from the polar bear pants that just caught your eye and stuck with you?
Oh, good question.
You just didn't expect to see, maybe?
I mean, the polar bear pants really stuck with me. Like I said, just a lot of scrimshaw, a lot of beautiful scrimshaw. I mean, it's an incredible art form. Yeah. I have a terrible memory, if you haven't noticed. So a lot of these experiences that were a long time ago or years ago, don't remember too much of the individual items in the museum, but I do remember, just the museum as a whole and this incredible place that Joe has set up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you find yourself on the edge of the world, let's say. You're making breakfast. You're you said acting as a concierge.
Yeah.
You're there for about 8 months.
About 8 months.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
8 months.
Yeah.
I feel like I've asked this question 3 times now,
Sure.
but what prompted you to leave? What prompted you to go on to the next adventure? That seems like a great place to settle.
Yeah, well, kind of. I don't know. I don't know if anybody would say Dead Horse is a great place to settle. That might be why they only have 2 residents.
Peaceful.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I loved it. It was very interesting. It was very challenging. I mean, if the glacier was difficult for, just how remote and removed it was, Dead Horse was infinitely more challenging. And yeah, I mean, it, winter was coming And they keep running through the winter. And I was telling Hugh earlier, if he's in here, that I would like to spend a winter in Dead Horse. But, my contract that I had signed up for was just for summer, and I figured I'd move on, I got a housekeeping or a house sitting gig lined up in Italy, and I went to that, which was not really a job, so it's not really on the list of things to talk about, but I had that lined up, so I was just like, all right, I'll go do that, and then start looking for another job.
So you said house sitting in Italy.
Yeah.
So how long was that? I want to touch on that too, because that's an adventure in of itself.
Like a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great. So, before we even get to the next job, it seems like there's this pattern of wanting to go somewhere, wanting to seek out an adventure, and just, flying out a couple of applications and getting it done, and arriving in Dead Horse and in, I think you said all across the, is it the lower continental U.S.? It was the train? The Circus?
Kind of upper.
Upper?
Yeah.
All over the
sort
U.S.
of mid to upper, yeah.
So for those who may want to follow in your footsteps, what are some tips you would have for them to submit these applications and get these adventurous jobs?
Yeah, so you said float out a few applications. I think that's a bit of an understatement. I've floated out a lot of applications.
How many? How many are we talking about?
God, I don't even know. I just would apply to a ton of different places, get a lot of rejections, and then, end up finding one that was willing to take a chance on me. And I think a lot of it is just not letting those rejections discourage you, I don't have any experience doing these things that I'm trying to do. So people hiring me is really like taking a chance, but there's people out there who are willing to take those chances, and you just kind of have to keep trying, keep dealing with those rejections. And for me, once I got my foot in the door with the circus, like I said, that was really helpful. Like being able to go out there, do that one thing, push through and get that circus job allowed me to then work up in Alaska, allowed me to work up in, on the glacier. Because like I said, they, jokingly said that it was about, am I the bearded lady or the crab hands? But really it's about them seeing that I have this experience living and working in this unusual environment. So it's once you can start kind of getting that resume going, and a lot of the people who worked up there didn't necessarily even have previous jobs doing that. We had people who had biked across the country. We had people who, just had experience living in remote places and being able to show that they were able to, understand how to live in this environment, live in a community environment too, because that's really important. Like you said, conflict resolution and conflicts come up in a community environment. And I think, they look for people specifically who understand how to resolve those conflicts and understand how to, how to live in a community, in a close community like that, So yeah, it really is just about trying, putting yourself out there, being I don't think I'm ever going to get this job, but I'm going to try anyways, and dealing with the failures and just continuing to try. And eventually, at least for me, I was lucky enough to find places that were willing to take those chances on me.
I love that. It's daring enough to try and having the grit to follow through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like the Marlboro Man just came up on the screen, so we have to transition into this.
Yeah, so this was my next job following the Arctic, and this was in Montana, a cattle ranch in Montana. And sort of similar to the circus, I had just always wanted to see what it was like to live on a cattle ranch. It's also sort of, the circus is this very American, like piece of American history, and it feels like ranching and cattle ranching and that kind of stuff is too. And I just was curious about that, wanted to see what it was like, wanted to keep working with animals too.
Yeah.
So I started Googling and looked for cattle ranches that were offering jobs, and I found this website called ranchworldads.com, and just started applying to places on there. I applied to a bunch once again, and ended up getting a call from this place, from the ranch manager, whose name was Vern. And Vern called me up, and I think the first words out of his mouth were, "Is this some kind of a joke?" And, you know, I told him, no, I'm just like, you know, really interested in you know, trying my hand at ranching. And, you know, he was just like, well, what are you, some kind of glutton for punishment? But, you know, we got to talking a little bit, and I told him about my experiences, you know, working with the circus and working with the sled dogs. And he was like, well, if you can take care of 160 sled dogs, you can take care of 1,800 head of cattle. I was like, I don't know about that.
Is that the conversion, 160 to 1,800? Okay.
I guess so, yeah. But yeah, so he, you know, he took a chance on me, and I went out and spent, you know, about 5-6 months working on the ranch.
5-6 months on there. So
Yeah.
what positions were you applying for, and then what position did you ultimately get?
I got the position of ranch hand. I think I applied to some like dude ranches and just different types of ranches that were like a little bit more tourism based, but this one was very much like a working cattle ranch. And I was in the position of ranch hand, so that, you know, they brought me out there for calving season. Calving season is when the cows give birth, and there's a lot of extra help that is needed during that time. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that can go wrong. So I stayed out there for calving. I stayed out there for this is you know, applying like medicines, giving shots and stuff like that. Cows don't like to sit still for that kind of stuff, so we have this big contraption that just kind of holds them still if we're giving them a shot or giving them some sort of medication orally or something. But yeah, stayed out there for calving, branding, and you know, moving them out to pasture. And this guy right here is this little calf we called Grumpy. He looks very grumpy, but he was a sweetheart. He had like a very difficult birth. It took forever. He's a huge calf. I don't remember how much he weighed, but like very big. And I think that's part of the reason why his face looks a little bit like kind of sad and smushed. But yeah, very difficult birth, you know, very difficult like first couple weeks of life where he, you know, didn't stand up for quite some time. I don't think he stood up for like the first few weeks, and we didn't think he was going to make it, but we just like bottle fed him, and eventually he did, and ended up thriving. Yeah.
Good for Grumpy.
Good for Grumpy, yeah. This one right here, Andy's kind of running through the different cow pictures that I have, so I hope you don't mind me telling you about some of the cows that I know.
Please do.
This one we called Dogface, and she was incredibly mean. Just one of the nastiest cows I ever met.
So what is a nasty cow? Like what does this cow do that made it so nasty?
I mean, I shouldn't say mean. You know, she had just given birth, and she was very protective. But part of the calving process, you know, after they give birth, we have to put those little tags in their ears. So I was driving around with Fern. She had just given birth. We were gonna go, you know, weigh the calf, check on the calf, make sure that he was healthy, put that tag in his ear. And we we were in like a little 4x4, so we like drove up to her. Vern told me to, you know, go out there, and I like kind of saw the way that she was moving, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know how safe I feel with that. And so I was like, I was clearly moving like pretty slow, and Vern started making fun of me, and it was just like, come on, get out there. And I like walked out, and then he was just like, nope, get back, get back. Yeah, I mean, she was just kind of ready to charge anybody who came close to her.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that leads me into the responsibilities of a ranch hand. I guess I really don't know what a ranch hand does other than get charged by cows
Get charged
now.
by cows, feed cows. This one, if I can tell you, I think this is the last like cow picture that I
Please,
have.
yeah, don't.
This one didn't really have a name, but I know her very well because she was always the first one whenever I was feeding them. All of the cows are a little bit timid. She was not. She was like the first one to like be right there, be eating the food before I even put it down. We had, so like I said, one of my jobs was feeding. They gave me a pickup truck when I got there. Not like gave it to me, but they,
Darn.
it was mine for the time that I was there. And on the back of the pickup truck is this thing called a bale bed. It's kind of like a carnival game, except for much, much larger. We have these big, giant rolls of hay that you've probably seen, in the countryside. So we have to like back the pickup truck up to the hay, and then we lower these arms out and pick it up, and then it like comes back on. And so I'd go out there in the pastures and roll out the bales of hay so that they could eat. And yeah, she was on the hay before before it even touched the ground. But yeah, so that was one of my jobs. That's that cow. She's very hungry all the time.
Cow after my own heart.
But yeah, some of the other jobs that I had as a ranch hand were, applying medications and helping with the birthing process. For especially the cows who were younger, who were the first year heifers, they had a lot of complications giving birth, or they were much more prone to complications because they hadn't done it before. So there was a lot of involvement that had to be done. We'd take them in, we'd help them, we'd stick our arm in there, we'd help pull the cow out,
Wow.
the calf out. And then, we'd weigh the calves, there's, the job description of a ranch hand is kind of endless,
Just anything that needs doing.
Literally anything. Yeah, there's, anything that needs to be done. Because in this place, we have this ranch, it's 60,000 acres, I believe, something like that, like a little
Wow.
over 60,000 acres. And 1,800 head of cattle, I think, something like that. And 5 people working it. So there's
Wow,
just
5
a
people.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Wow, I would think there would be more people running 1,800 head of cattle.
Not really. There were a few more people living there. Once again, it's, this is a place where people are living and they have their families there. So like one of the other ranch hands, actually I guess 2 of the other ranch hands had their wives and kids there as well. And sometimes Bo was one of the other ranch hands who had a couple of daughters who were like 10 and 5 or something like that. They'd come out and help us too.
Oh.
But yeah, there's just always something to be done. This is us giving medications to a calf in the field. We're, riding around and making sure that nobody's sick, looking for signs of illness, looking for signs of injury. And if we see those, then we treat them. Or like figure out, what needs to be done and figure out how to get them treated. It's just endless, pretty much.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Did you ever participate in a cattle drive?
Somewhat, yeah. Not a huge one,
Okay.
Cattle drives can be days and days long, but, I definitely did some like herding like this. In the early spring, like late winter, when calving starts, we like pull all of them in closer so that we can observe them more. And then as the babies get older, we send them out to like larger pastures. So they're in like these close, like smaller pastures during calving time. Once they reach a certain age, we drive them out to bigger pastures. So we did small like moves around the ranch, but we never did anything that was like days long or anything like that. Yeah.
Did you ever call them moves? Sorry.
We did not, but honestly, I should suggest that. Yeah.
So this is fantastic. I mean, I'm sensing another theme, working 24/7 in these different areas of
Yep.
adventure, I'm going to call it,
Yep.
from, this cattle ranch to dog sledding to circus performing or participating in the circus, not performing in the circus, but
Yeah.
you get my point.
Yeah, I mean, when you're living and working in these places, especially, these places that require so much work to keep them running, to keep them functional. I mean, the work kind of never stops. So you are really like, you wake up in the morning, and especially, with animals and with this many animals, like you wake up and go out there and feed them, go out there and check on them, do like your rounds, making sure that everything looks okay, and then you come in and eat breakfast, and then, it just kind of is really, it is a 24/7 thing.
Yeah. And now that you're running your own business, you're a beekeeper in the LA area, do you think these years of working in these different like super intense businesses helped you with your entrepreneurship?
I think so. I mean, I do think that the business that I have right now is a lot more relaxed than this.
Sure.
I don't have to work 24/7. Sometimes I do. But yeah, I do think that like it has helped a lot, learning the lessons, especially like things like from the glacier, just like the logistics of keeping a camp running, is something that I can kind of transfer into the business that I have now. In a weird way, it's obviously not the same.
Oh, no, not weird at all.
But yeah, I mean, I do use a lot of those same skills working with animals. Bees are so different than cows, but there are, similarities in just like the way that we like move with them, the way that we work with them. So yeah, I mean, I do think that I've brought a lot of that into the job that I have now. But like I said, it's a lot more relaxed. I mean, if it rains here, I take the day off. I can't check on the bees in the rain.
That's great. You get rain days.
Yeah,
Nice.
Exactly. But in places like this, I think I have a picture of us in like a crazy blizzard when I first got there. We would work through any kind of weather, pretty much, except for lightning mostly. But yeah, so it was a lot more extreme. It's a lot more relaxed now.
Cows are a little more waterproof than bees. That's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. So this is a pretty robust snowstorm.
Yeah. I mean, when I got to Montana, it was in like February, and it was, oh God, like -15,
Oh, wow.
something like that. So it wasn't warm. Yeah.
But you were acclimated from your previous job. You had.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of like working in that like extreme weather. It's, obviously not comfortable, but yeah, I mean, it can be pretty exciting, I guess, to work in that kind of weather.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. I think if you're going through extreme weather and you're executing a job, it's probably incredibly challenging at times. And
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, everything becomes a lot more urgent when you're working in that kind of weather too. Yeah, and it definitely becomes a lot more thrilling, I should say.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely imagine.
Yeah.
Now, were you riding on horses as well, or were you just in the truck?
Yeah, mostly horses.
Got you, okay.
Yeah, the truck was to get, the truck was to pick up the hay and to get from like place to place, and like I said, 60,000 acre ranch. I mean, sometimes you need a truck to get around.
Sure, yeah.
And to get into town and do, here's my horses. Get into town and do, a grocery run or something like that. But yeah, these are the two horses that I rode when I was out there. It's Music and Scamp. And yeah, I mean, most of what we did was on horseback because a truck or a 4x4 can't move like a horse. It's not, horses are so much more agile, and they can go over things, they can go around things, they could go through I mean, I guess a truck can go through a river too, but they can do a lot more things that a truck can't do, and they can move a lot more like a cow, and they can also think a lot more like a cow. I mean, a truck is just, you're at the wheel and that's it. And I think a horse can really think much more like a cow than I can, So they're better at the job than I am, and so they were incredibly important.
That's
there.
fantastic. That's great. So you were on this ranch for, you said 8 months?
No, it was a little bit shorter than that.
A little shorter
it was
than 8
like
months?
5, 6.
5, 6 months.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, did you go straight from this ranch into beekeeping, or?
No, I actually had one other job in between where I was kayak guiding in the swamp, or paddle guiding in the swamps in Louisiana.
Wow. Paddle guiding in the swamps of Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's a huge jump from a ranch in Montana, from Dead Horse in Alaska, from the sled dogging from the, so it's this.
Yeah, very different weather.
Yeah. Not many cows.
Not many cows. Although there was actually a kind of a side note, there was a little like cow plaque thing hanging up in one of the cypress trees on the trail that we would go on, because Louisiana floods a lot, and they had put this plaque up to like mark this place where after this giant flood in early 1900s, there was a cow stuck up in that tree. And so, yeah, not a lot of cows in the swamps, but there was that one cow, like
that one
plaque.
time.
Yeah, cow head plaque. But yeah, very different. Being on the water, very different than being on horseback, and but yeah, I did that for just a few months. I think I did that one for probably like 3-4 months. We were doing treks with the Boy Scouts on this, I guess it's not officially a high adventure base, but it's something like that, called Swamp Base. And so there were 60-mile trips, week long each, and we'd take them out, we'd paddle like 10 to 20 miles a day, and camp out there, sleep out in the swamps at night. And yeah, I mean, at the end of it, they had completed their 60 miles, and yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
60 miles of swamp kayaking, or look like canoeing there.
Kayaks, canoes. I mean, it's Boy Scouts always have canoes there, but yeah, that's a kayak. I mean, depended on how many people you had. I was in a kayak if we had an odd number of people, canoe if we had an even number of people. But yeah.
What kind of wildlife are we looking at here?
Lots of gators. I mean, tons of wildlife, honestly. The swamps are so full of just so many different critters. But yeah, lots of gators. We saw gators pretty much every day. Lots of huge spiders, like golden thread orb weavers were these like massive spiders that would make their webs out there. We had a lot of like beautiful bird life. We had, snakes, obviously. We didn't see a ton of snakes, but they were out there, water moccasins and stuff like that. And, incredible insect life, incredible reptile life. I mean, I decided to work in Louisiana after I had been driving around the country, and I stopped in Louisiana. And I stopped in this tiny little town called Catahoula that's like in the middle of the swamps, and I went to this little bar. And at first they didn't even want to serve me because they didn't know who I was. It's like that kind of a small bar. Yeah.
Small town bar.
And I started talking to people there, and they were just like, oh, have you ever been frogging before? And so they took me out frogging, and that was my first time like experiencing like being on the water in the swamps at nighttime. And it's this incredible like symphony out there at night of just like wildlife noises, and it's so loud, but it's so beautiful, and like there's just so much going on out there, and you're just surrounded by all of these different creatures. And if you take your part of frogging is you have like this spotlight to like look at the frogs out there. They come up and are attracted to the light, so that's when you grab them. But if you take your spotlight, you can like look around you and you see all of these different eyes out there. And I don't remember exactly what colors they were, but I think it's like, you know, like red or like spider eyes, and then like white or frog eyes and yellow or gator eyes or something like that. Like you can just tell like what the different creatures are from like the reflection of their eyes.
Wow.
But after that experience, I was just like, I love this place. I like want to spend more time in this place. So I started looking for jobs in the swamps and found this like swamp touring company. I mean, like I said, I wasn't that interested in doing tourism, but if it got me to like sleep in the swamps at night, I was there for it. I didn't take this picture, but this is a beautiful picture by the guy who ran the organization. He's an incredible photographer. And I mean, it's just like, magical out there. You know, it's a totally different world. But yeah, so.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's what a fantastic way to spend some months in the swamps here.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you eat the frogs after you caught them?
Not that day, but I have eaten like frogs from the swamps after that.
Yeah.
I like kept moving along after that, so I didn't get a chance to eat the frogs. But yeah.
But somebody did, presumably.
Somebody did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had some frog in Florida one time. It was tasty, a little gamey.
Yeah. Definitely gamey. It's
Yeah.
kind of like I've heard it described as like fishy chicken before. And
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm in the mood for some frog.
Well.
Got to go to Louisiana.
Yeah, I guess so.
Do some frogging. So after this, after you spent a couple months with the Boy Scouts doing these 60-mile treks, you got back in, or you got into beekeeping and came back to California? Is that
So after Louisiana, I decided to come back here just because my parents were getting older. My grandmother was getting older. She just passed away. She was 99. And I just wanted to, you know, like being out there and traveling was amazing and I love it, but I also wanted to spend some time with family too. I think, you know, one of the things that doing all of that really made me realize is that like it is really important to have those, you know, communities and, or, you know, those just to have people, you know. I met a lot of people and formed these bonds, and then I left, and then I, you know, kind of kept in touch with them, but not really. And yeah, so coming back here, I wanted to be able to just like, you know, spend time with loved ones, and also, you know, try and figure out a way to like have like longer lasting communities too, which I think is one of the reasons why I, you know, love this place too. Is it's a way to like connect with people who do the traveling thing and you know, have that sort of community while also, you know, people are leaving and going and coming, and you know, so yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying yes. I came back to Los Angeles after that, and started getting into beekeeping. I found a woman who was looking for a beekeeper's apprentice, and just started working with her. You know, she knew that I had worked with animals before and learned everything that I know about beekeeping from her. And yeah, now I own this beekeeping company and have about 140 hives, something like that, around the Los Angeles area. I'm a certified master beekeeper, and I've been doing this for like 5-6 years, so even longer than the glacier job.
That's fantastic. Yeah, sounds like a lot of hives.
Yeah, it keeps me busy.
Yeah, busy as a bee.
Yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic. I can't stop myself tonight. I don't know what's happening here.
The bee puns, like now that we're talking about beekeeping, like it's so easy to find bee puns.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's some good ones.
I can only imagine, and I'm restraining myself actively from trying to make them up as we go here. I'm sure the audience has some questions. I would love to open it up to audience questions, and okay, we got an enthusiastic hand over here, so let's start there.
Okay. 2 questions, Phoebe.
Yes.
Let me use the mic. Yeah, 2 questions. With regard to the circus experience, When you were traveling on the train, did you get to any cities where they still use the big tents, or were they all in arenas? That's question one. Question two is with regard to the what's question two? Question two had to do with your experiences on the glacier, on all of, well, the whole all-around thing. Are there ever moments where you miss that? Have you ever had moments where you thought about giving up beekeeping and going back to those adventurous, exciting places?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer that second one first. So, I mean, all the time. Yeah, I miss it all the time. I mean, there were so many challenges in these experiences, but ultimately, like, I look back so fondly on them, and I think about, going back a lot. I miss them a lot. And I also think about, doing something else and trying something else a lot. I mean, I think that's, like we were talking about, why I ultimately ended up leaving these jobs is because as much as I love them, I, wanted to challenge myself with something new. So I think about that a lot too. But yeah, I miss them all the time, honestly. I miss, the views at some of them. I mean, some of them are just like these spectacularly beautiful places. And, I miss the people. I miss the cultures at these places. Yeah, so I definitely do. And with Ringling, to answer your tent question, Ringling didn't, we were pretty much all arena shows when I was there. So they didn't use the tent. The tent is such a big piece of equipment and infrastructure, and to set it up, it's so labor intensive, that Ringling had really moved away from the tent just to they could fill arenas, they were easier, they had the money for it. But there are still plenty of tent shows that are in the US, and especially Big Apple has a massive circus tent that they move around and they set up. And a friend of mine worked on Big Apple for a while, and just the work that goes into making sure that that tent is set up correctly, making sure that everything on it is working and that the canvas isn't broken. It's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Hi. With Ringling Brothers, kind of like you had mentioned, a lot of times I think of the performers as being people who were born to it, from when they were little kids, they raise up to this. You joined as an adult. If you had stuck with it, was there any sort of pathway to becoming a performer for somebody who kind of comes into it as an adult, wasn't born to it, doesn't already have, isn't already an expert? Would there have been a path for you to have become a performer?
I would say absolutely, yeah. I think that it would take a while to get to that place, especially with Ringling being as big a show as it is. But there's definitely a path for that. I mean, I saw a few people move around in different positions while I was there. I saw some people move from, some that were performers to other performing positions, from clown to hair hang or something like that, So they go from being a performer to learning this new skill. But there's definitely room for people who don't have those skills already to come in and start to learn them there. It just takes a long time to work up to the point where you're gonna be up, on that show, on that stage, being able to do those things at the skill level that these people who, like you said, who've been doing it for their entire life are at. There's a lot of smaller circuses that still travel around the US that I think it's a little bit easier, from what I've heard, to actually get to the place where you're in the show and being a performer with those circuses. Ringling also, it's such a big production, and it's also so well known that people really vie for those spots. There's a lot of competition there, but there's a lot of room to learn those skills. And I think circus arts are becoming a lot more popular and a lot more accessible to people too. I mean, there's more circus schools, there's more circus training places, so you can even start learning those things on your own and go to the show. There was a woman who was with Ringling when I was there who started learning trapeze when she was in her late 20s and really like dedicated herself to that. And then, she was one of the trapeze artists on the show. So there's definitely space for that, yeah.
What would you have liked to become if you stayed at the circus?
Oh, I really loved like the aerial acts. I thought they were incredible. I'm terrified of heights. So it's like the worst thing for me to do. But like I said, I've started doing some silk stuff since I left there, and it's also a challenge that I really enjoy. But yeah, I think, like trapeze or silks or something like that, some of the aerial stuff, but also working with the animals too. I mean, the lion tamer, and that would be amazing. Yeah.
All great options.
Yeah.
Now, just to be clear, the silks are like the large silk cloth hanging from the ceiling, and you kind of go up and down them, and
Yeah. Exactly.
Fantastic. That's great. Questions? We have one over here and one over there.
Quite some time ago, I heard, maybe I read, that the lead sled term, mush, was actually fictitious. That's only a Hollywood term you hear in movies and folktales. And I was surprised that you use the term musher.
Yeah.
Do they call their dogs out mush? If not, what do they say when they want them to go?
So they do not. The term musher is still used for the people who are guiding the sleds, but it's, so like you said, mushers are often portrayed as saying mush when the sled takes off. But it's, people, mushers often refer to it as like a mushy word. It's not very sharp. It doesn't have like a very like clear sound to it. So it's not something that the dogs are gonna like pick up on as easily as something even like go or something like that. So mushers actually use a lot of, they use different words for their team just depending on what they prefer. But yeah, people don't really use mush anymore. The terms that are commonly used are like the left and right, and one of them is ha, and the other one is G, I think. I think it's like G and ha or something like that, which are a lot more sharp sounds, and most mushers do use those terms for left and right, but for go, they'll usually say go or something like that, yeah.
Hi. For all of the dogs on the glacier, I was wondering, because I think there were 160 of them, did they get along? Like, did all the dogs play together?
No. I mean, just like people, dogs have, different personalities, and some of them aren't going to get along with others. But, we got to know which ones interacted well together and which ones didn't, and so we would just work on keeping those ones apart. They had like sort of different areas for the different teams, so if different dogs didn't interact well, we would just keep them separate. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them did get along really well. Part of being a dog that is like fit for a dog team is sociability and like being able to interact with other dogs. So it wasn't too common that we had dogs that didn't get along, but it definitely did happen. Yeah.
Talking about sociability, I understand on the circus train you sort of bid for different jobs. You're looking to make extra money to pick up some cherry pie, I think it is. And my understanding, didn't people have to be kind of, if you wanted to get that extra work, if you had to be a get along and not have big conflicts with people? And
Yeah.
was there an incentive to, get over it and work as a team? or you didn't get picked up for the jobs you wanted?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there wasn't a ton of, bidding necessarily, but you did get, there was extra work in, loadouts and setups, and, there's a lot of stuff that goes into putting a show together. And yeah, people would definitely pick up jobs, and there is a lot of incentive to get along, not only because you're more likely to get the jobs, to get the money, but also because you have to live on a train with these people. And if you don't get along, you're not going to have a very good time. And circus people are not hesitant to, I shouldn't say this is necessarily as a generalization about circus people, but just in my experience, if they don't like you, they'll let you know, and they'll, take advantage of you in one way or another. I mean, charge you extra for that beer that you're buying off of them on the train, or, something like that.
And isn't there a market for liquor and the price goes up the longer you're on the train?
Oh, yeah. So on the train, like I said, when we're moving, we're just kind of locked in there. So there's this whole economic system that kind of crops up in that environment. And people would buy liquor and cigarettes and stuff like that, and then sell it for double the price. I mean, we had what was known as the Murphy Mart on the train. This guy Murphy would just stock up on beer and liquor and whatever he wanted to buy. I don't even think he drank, so he bought stuff that people just hated. But they didn't have any beer. We were in Utah the night before, and all of the liquor stores were closed, so everybody wasn't able to get any, and so you have to just go to the Murphy Mart and pay $10 for just a shitty little beer. But yeah, and then there was also a market for other, I mean, you could buy a lot of different things from people on that train. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Phoebe. I'll just talk loud.
Sure.
Thank you, Phoebe, and thank you, Grant. My question, what did they do with all the dog feces?
Great question.
Because in early London, they recycled that for the tanneries.
Okay.
They had valuable chemicals in it. So I'm just curious.
So ours just went to the what's it called? I don't know. Ours just went to where the feces goes, I guess. Yeah, exactly.
Like a dump for it.
Yeah, like a special, yeah. But there was a brief time, I think, where the owners of the company did try to make a dog feces composting business, just to try. It doesn't work very well, and people don't like it very much. So it didn't go over very well. But they tried. They had this product that they had plenty of.
Nobody wants.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, the feces, we helicoptered it out, just like we helicoptered everything else out. Put it in big barrels and slung it out under a helicopter, and then it would go to Juneau. Actually, that's where it would go. Yeah.
How did the dogs sleep? All together, or?
No, they had their own little houses. Pretty simple.
The were in the picture?
Yeah, exactly.
The little cubicles?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they would sleep in those houses. Yeah.
Were they all mostly the same breeds?
Alaskan Husky. So Alaskan Husky is a kind of a mixed breed of dog. Even though I think it is a registered breed, it's got a lot of other types of dogs in it. But yeah, all of them were Alaskan Husky. We might have had some Siberians, but most of them were Alaskan. Yeah.
Well, Phoebe, thank you so much for joining us tonight and doing this interview. It's fantastic to have you on this side of the AV, and we hope to have you as an interviewee again sometime very, very soon. Before we wrap up, Night of High Adventure is coming up October 14th, and I don't want to ruin any surprises, but Phoebe is donating a beekeeping experience. So if you didn't have enough reason to come to NOAA this year, coming to bid on this experience is definitely another one to add to your list.
Sound immersion.
Oh, and we have the sound immersion experience coming up on Saturday. So in 2 days, you can come to the club and check that out. 7 o'clock. So not to be missed, not to be missed.
There's a flyer on the front desk as you go out to take a look at it.
Yes, if you're in the club tonight, you can definitely check out that flyer. If not, if you're watching on YouTube, you can check it out on the website as well, make a reservation. Looking forward to seeing you all here. Thank you very much, everybody. Another round of applause for Phoebe.
All right, Phoebe, we have a certificate of appreciation for you.